Okay guys, so as you can see that when I would turn left, I would get no popping noise, but as soon as I went from the left back to the right, I'm getting a popping noise. I'm suspecting that it's in here or into my steer box. Now you can see where I have this Heim joint bolted up to the track bar mount. And then if you follow the track bar, we are bolted down to a bushing at the other end of the track bar to the track bar mount that's welded to the axle. So the first steps I took in troubleshooting this issue with the popping noise in the steering is I removed this bolt and lowered down the bushing end of the track bar. Once the bolt was removed, I went back into the Jeep and turned the steering left and right, and the popping noise went away. So that told me that there was an underlying issue somewhere in the track bar. What I did was I just inspected the bolt holes and made sure they're not wallowed out. The bushing still looks good and the bolt is still good. So I went ahead and just torqued that bolt, put this back together, torqued the bolt back to 55 foot-pounds. So the next thing to look was pretty obvious. It was the Heim joint. Now typically when Heim joints start to fail, they begin to make a popping noise and then they continue to fail. But that's what's great about having a serviceable track bar, is you can replace these Heim joints on the fly. This particular Heim joint here is a 3-piece Heim joint made by FK. They cost a pretty penny, but the build quality is there. So if you're looking to upgrade your 2-piece Heim joints to a 3-piece, go with the FKs because I highly recommend them. Now typically you would have a ball joint, and when that ball joint starts failing or gets real sloppy and loose, that's an indication of wear, and it also needs to be replaced. And I know for the factory track bars on the stock suspension that you just have to buy the whole track bar because the ball joints on the end are non-serviceable. So let's take a look at this FK 3-piece bearing. It's not the one I need, but I'll show you how to replace it. So when ordering your particular Heim joint, you want to make sure it's a left or a right-handed thread. A left-handed thread, they'll usually have notches along the hex corners of the jam nut, and then you could just run your finger across the threads to see if they go left or right. This one in particular is a right-handed thread. So the parts of the bearing are the hemispherical ball in the center, and on the outer edge is the outer race of the ball bearing, and then you have the housing that houses this bearing that makes up the parts of this 3-piece Heim joint. Let's go ahead and install this and I'll show you how to do it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is just mark the positioning of the threads and where they've locked it down onto the track bar. So I'm going to take a marker and a ruler, and I'm just going to mark the center of the bolt here, right? And then I'm going to mark the edge of this nut and the center of the housing on this Heim joint to match the center of the bolt. And now I'm going to measure from the edge with my ruler here. It's going to be exactly 2 3/16. I'm going to mark it right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate that with the new Heim joint. To replace the Heim joint is we're going to loosen up this bolt. It's got a 15/16 head. I'm just going to take my wrench here and crack it loose like this. And a little trick to feed that bolt in and out when you're making your adjustments and tuning your track bar, you just want to take your bar like this and go ahead and pry this way or this way to get that bolt to slip in and out smoothly. Okay, so I'm going to leave the bolt in just for now. And I'm going to come over here and crack the Heim joint jam nut. I'm just going to loosen it up like that. Okay, so now the bolt has been removed. We can lower the Heim joint. Now, if it's a little bit difficult, you might have to come in here with a pry bar and pop it out. Mine's going to be difficult. So what I did was I just took the between frame here with my crescent wrench, got it on there, and just bent the ear back just enough to where I can center that bearing and pull the Heim joint downward off the bracket. Now this might be tough to unthread, because they're gonna have most likely some blue or red Loctite, but in my case it's just unthreading out by hand, so I got pretty lucky. Just gonna thread it all the way off. And there you have it. So because I don't have the replacement part today, and this one is only beginning to fail, I'm just gonna go ahead and put this one back on, and we'll torque it to 110 foot-pounds and see what happens. So after reinstalling the original Heim joint, it was very clear that my track bar needed to be tuned. Okay, so in that video you saw that I was having to hold the steering wheel to the left because the axle was wandering to the right. So to correct that, I have to thread my Heim joint out, and I'll do it in increments, just 1 or 2 threads at a time, and lock it down. I'll run the bolt through and I'll go test drive it. Now if you're the opposite way and your vehicle's wandering left, you're having to hold your steering wheel to the right, then you're gonna wanna take your Heim joint and run it in. Right now I got it set up to where my wheels are really straight and the Heim joint has just been replaced. So you shouldn't have to mess with anything other than here as an adjustment, because we didn't touch anything else, just replacing the Heim joint. So on that note, with the replacement of the joint and the retorquing of both the bushing side and the Heim joint side, let's go ahead and test the theory and see if the popping noise went away. Awesome. The track bar has been totally tuned and we are back to normal, no popping sound. It's very likely that the bolts just came loose and they needed to be retorqued, but for now everything's back to normal and I have the new Heim joint on order. It should be in the mail here pretty soon. Hey, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up and consider watching some of my other videos that may be helpful to you. Had a lot of fun figuring this one out and I hope it works out for you too. Until next time, we'll see you on the next one. Peace.